Welcome to TradeTheMBI.com. This is John. This report is for the 28th of January. Everyone was talking about the Chinese AI and how that was the market disruption. Really? So what did that have to do with oil? Why was oil off so big? Why was crypto off so big? Again, it's a canard because everything was under pressure, and again, more related to potential for the trade situation than, yes, certainly there was an impact for the NASDAQ, at least. I mean, if we flip over to the NASDAQ, we can take a look. Certainly suffering more from it because obviously some of those businesses who've invested so much money into potential of what AI will do or whatever, it was the same as in the 90s with the internet bubble where companies were spending huge amounts. They were just ahead of the curve. And while this may be a thing, it's not all that directly related. But we did fill in all of the negatives that took place, and we really saw what happens when you get to an extended overdone, and sometimes it can just happen quickly. When we look at the readings, you can see how shorts dropped off dramatically on it, but still pretty close to each other within a magenta and yellow, and magenta is still slightly in the lead even at this particular stage. Of course, we got a little bit of bounce back, and it was quite a recovery back up. But when we looked at it intraday, you could see we had the MBI white lead, which called for a move towards zero, particularly once we were below 50%. And that's just a reality of things. Of course, that was a flight into treasuries. No shock with that. Now, when we flipped oil, well, I thought it was about AI. How did oil all of a sudden drop? Oh, you mean it wasn't related to the idea that, the U.S. could randomly pick any country and start ramping up massive tariffs, and or also the combination workout that, Trump made with the EU, Saudi Arabia about increasing supplies and making sure that U.S. LNG and that would make it to Europe? No, it couldn't have had any impact whatsoever. It has to be because of AI, because that has so much to do with oil. It's just the narratives. Yeah, we talked about how Euro was just pretending. It's very funny. Literally crazy that people are even there. I've just been as far as the Euro trade is a dead situation, and it's not looking any better. And we'll see what happens with Germany's elections. That could really create another dynamic. Gold also taking a beating. Now, this continues to happen sometimes when you have market sell-offs and that. So while it had nothing to do with AI, because what does gold have to do with that? Nothing. It's a side effect of where people have to move money to make up for things. We said the ripple of this also took place in crypto, but again, crypto was already facing MBI white lead, so these things were already, existing and built into it. So the move to the 50% was exactly what we would expect from MBI white. No real shock with those kind of moves, and of course, you can see already it's built back most of that anyway. And so, a lot of this was much to do about nothing. Yeah, but that's what the market loves. It loves to create a narrative. It was a good excuse. You created a lot of volatility, and bingo, you're not that far back from where you were in the first place. But it certainly scared a lot of weak hands, and that ultimately is the market's number one priority. When we look at the 50K, well, it was pretty evident before this all happened that we'd already moved into MBI white lead, and below 25 for magenta typically is extremely weak territory, particularly if you're under yellow. And yeah, it held up for a little bit, gap down, and the continuation for as long as MBI white was leading, and when it stopped, that was the changeover, happened to be at the 23%. Pretty straightforward from there. Yeah, I don't think I really need to add anything. It's pretty clean. When we flip it to the 5K, you can see that from the early morning there was the dip. We started building up towards the open, and pretty much intraday it wasn't a whole lot of anything other than, these are pretty large moves relative number-wise, and pretty much the end-of-day rally. And you can see that's pretty much where we're at this particular stage. Nice little bonus bump here in the EU session. All that pretty much explains volatility. No, yeah, it just cracked me up reading all of the hype about the whole AI thing. I think that was just a canard. It really just is an excuse. And this is what you often find when there's a movement in the market, people taking advantage of things. But you got to understand the impact of what's taking place in Germany and that. Elon spoke in that. And the resulting impact from a European standpoint is frightening. So that's where things began and it just cascaded. That's my view. Anyway, we just keep following the readings as they are. Pretty much tells the story. As always, know anything relevant, I'll put in the Skype chat. Have a good one. Trade well.